A win in the Cup cars and the trucks in the same week must surely be an incredible mental boost for Abner Acosta. But he's a long ways off his teammate and points leader Richard Regan Jr. Since Abner's truck win came right here at COTA, can he use that to his advantage tonight? We'll find out soon as we get ready to watch Round 9 of the PRL NASCAR Cup Series. You'll see it all live on the Global SimRacing channel. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is Christian Challoner. Behind the scenes is our director, Sean Ambrose, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Circuit of the Americas is probably more closely associated to Formula One and top-level sports cars, but it's getting its first taste of stock car racing. Let's head to our track guide to learn more about it. Welcome to Circuit of the Americas. The cliche of everything's bigger in Texas rings true for this track in the Lone Star State. Built specifically for Formula One, the number of corners, circuit length, safety features, and general track amenities immediately set this place apart from almost every racing course in the United States. Of the 3 layouts available, the most widely used is the Grand Prix circuit, which tops out at a whopping 20 turns along nearly 3.5 miles. Many of them have been modeled after well-known sections of European tracks such as Silverstone, Hockenheim, and Istanbul. But compared to those venues, this place still has lots of unique challenges. Turn 1 in particular features the largest elevation change from the lap and culminates in a blind and sharp hairpin. The penultimate corner is just as tough, with its off-camber apex and sudden drop forcing many to escape to the paved runoff on the outside. And though it was meant to lure F1, many other series have now raced here, ranging from IndyCar to WEC, IMSA, and even V8 supercars. Track days are also common, with the SCCA running all types of amateur events to allow up-and-coming drivers to feel what it's like to battle on the same tarmac as Vettel and Hamilton have. With this track, American race fans finally get to experience a purpose-built course made in the modern day. Texas went bigger and better, and in the process, raised the bar for their peers. Christian, this is an interesting track to try and race stock cars on, but I have to imagine that it's going to provide quite the challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. When you say an interesting track for stock cars, I think it's actually more like a track that was completely not made with stock cars in mind, because basically every corner around this place is extremely difficult. Obviously, you got the S's at the beginning of the lap. It's flat through there. There's no banking, and the stock cars really don't like that. So that's a really challenging section. Obviously, 20 turns, very, very long track, 5.5 kilometers or nearly 3.5 miles in imperial terms. And lap times are kind of between about 2-minute 10s for the fastest guys, down to 2-minute 20s for guys who are not necessarily struggling around here, but ones who are maybe doing long runs and whatnot. And because it's such a long lap, it's only 33 laps tonight.
Yeah, so we won't see them go by us too many times, but there'll still be plenty of racing to keep everybody interested. Speaking of which, today's race is brought to you by Simulation Motorsports Affinity provides many consulting services, from completely customizing simulators to managing teams, individual drivers, and complete events. They're working hard to bring everyone together at one place to support and promote sim racing internationally. Find out how you can bridge the gap between virtual and real motorsports at SIMMSA.net. The PRL NASCAR Cup Series is also brought to you by NinjaTrader. Ready to compete against the financial markets? Supporting over 60,000 users across the globe, NinjaTrader provides award-winning trading software and brokerage services. NinjaTrader is always free to use for advanced charting, backtesting, and trade simulation. Visit NinjaTrader.com to get started with a risk-free trading simulator and start tracking your performance. Today's broadcast is also proudly sponsored by ButtKicker. ButtKicker products add an incredible immersion and realism to any game. Feel every nuance and truly put yourself in the driver's seat. Check them out at thebuttkicker.com. As we take a look at the Drivers' Championship here in the Cup cars, Richard Regan Jr. still holding the edge over everybody else. Matthew Long has been chasing him all season long, but is a whole 24 points behind, so it's looking tough with only 2 rounds to go. O'Brien, Holly, and Acosta round out the top 5 with a pretty close fight between O'Brien and Holly, only split by 6 points. What about the team's championship, Christian?
Well, no surprises, private label Team Hype are the leaders by quite a margin, actually 107 points with only 2 rounds to go. So they're in position really to basically lock it up tonight, or if not lock it up, get very, very close to doing so. And what about Racing Black? The team in second, 107 points back. Not quite as big an advantage for them over third place. SG eSports 140 back, but a really tight battle actually for third place. James Bird Racing is only 1 point behind in fourth, with Car Ramrod 167 points off the lead in fifth.
And for today's race details, we already heard a little bit about it from Christian, with it being a 33-lap event. But we have to remember, there are no spare cars that these drivers have to try and save them if they get damaged. The good news is there's a lot of paved runoff to try and keep them from hitting anything. It is an open setup series. I'm curious to see if anybody finds an edge in that sense. It's usually more about comfort on the roadside for that one. Someone in the background there spins, but 24 incident limits, and that is a real concern because of that same paved runoff, because they will easily rack them up if they get abusive with the edges of the track. We're waiting for the first lap times to come in, which probably won't be for another 2 minutes or so. So I think we got a chance to glance at the weather, Christian. I noticed this was pretty similar when we had the trucks here. Pretty steep on the track surface itself.
Yeah, absolutely. 46 degrees in metric. Not actually quite sure what that is in Imperial, but obviously very, very hot. 115, there we go with the on-screen graphics. And yeah, that makes it really, really difficult to drive a stock car around this track. Obviously, it's out in Texas and it's the middle of the day, so it's pretty hot anyway. But with the stock cars, that's kind of like a double hit, really. They're difficult at the best of times on road courses, and when the track's really hot, it's obviously really, really slick as well. I already mentioned a little bit about how there are essentially no positively cambered corners at this track to kind of help you down at the apexes and whatnot, and that really does affect these cars quite a bit. Obviously a flat track isn't too much of a concern for something like a GT car or a Formula car. They're kind of good with that, and obviously the curbs and whatnot, but stock car really has an advantage when the track's kind of cambered for it. It's obviously places like Watkins Glen are not easy to get around in a stock car, but they're much easier than somewhere like Coda, and it's all these slow speed corners as well without kind of the camber assistance, and obviously the fact that you're going so slow, it puts a lot of load through the rear tires, and that's really kind of the key. Is obviously you've got a lot of hard braking zones at the end of some very, very long straights, and they're key to get right. But the other thing is not killing the rear tires coming out of these slow speed corners, because it's easy to do. It's easy to just spin them off, and you'll cook them off really, really fast. So that's something that we're probably going to watch out for, and that's something where there's probably a little bit of advantage to be gained in terms of setup as well. Definitely long run pace and setups.
Been watching Trent Dinkle's onboard. Had a bit of a moment coming up to turn 19, but thankfully caught it as we head up into the first corner. Looks like he's going to navigate that one successfully. He's among our first drivers to start a flying lap. David Wilson right now is the first among those. If he doesn't make a mistake along here, he's looking likely to set the first time. Interesting thing is they've kept the 2-lap limit like they do on the ovals, and it is all solo qualifying out here, Christian. And I mentioned those off tracks earlier. Keeping a clean one's going to be ever so critical.
Yeah, this section that he's actually just coming through right now is very, very easy to run wide through there onto that green section of well, AstroTurf, but not really AstroTurf, and pick up a 1X and obviously invalidate the lap time. But actually the hardest corner, I think, at this racetrack is actually the first one, because it's an uphill braking zone, which is kind of helpful to you. You know, it lets you get the car slowed down really, really late on, but it's a really, really difficult apex to kind of pick out. You can't really see it, especially obviously when you're braking on the uphill. And you can destroy a lap right at the very beginning, and obviously it's such a long racetrack that you kind of just have to carry that all the way around, knowing that you've already blown the lap. And it's a circuit that in a stock car it doesn't reward you really for pushing. It's actually better to kind of keep it really neat and tidy around the lap, and that's generally the way to go fast.
So far it's been looking decent from the 39. We've got most of them out there at this stage. A few of them are in the pits, so if you see names such as Fowler, Hall, Stout, or Cervantes not take a lap, that's because they have been given an end-of-line penalty, which is going to hurt all the more on a road course where we will not have any full course cautions today. Out of the final turn, 39 is going to set the first marker. What is he going to have underneath him as he comes across it? A 2:13.7. We saw 2:10s a little bit earlier in the warm-up, so I expect someone to be able to go quicker than that pretty soon.
Yeah, I definitely expect that that won't be the pole time, but 13.7 is still a pretty respectable time around this track.
Esau Jr. coming around and across. Let's see what he's got. That is a little bit slower to 2:16.5. That will put him in third. Walden is in second, but this is the guy we expect to have the legs over everybody else. Abner Acosta, he won in the trucks at this track less than a week ago. 1 week ago, he finally took a win in the Cup cars at Dover, and a 2:14.4 is not the fastest. David Wilson still holds it.
Yeah, he looked pretty wide through the last corner, but that's definitely not where he would have lost all that time. Elliott White actually to the top of the board, 2:12.9. 7/10 off what he ran in practice, but still the fastest time so far.
Championship leader Richard Regan Jr. continues to slide down as he was as high as third, I believe, and now he's down to sixth as more drivers get a time done. Jose Medina, he's not even going to get a time, unfortunately, as he had an off track somewhere. So we're going to look at Charles Sumner up next through the stadium section. Last few technical, slow back and forth hairpins in the car. It doesn't quite get wound up around the triple apexer that still needs a name. I've been calling it Turkey. Some people have been referring to the tower that it's named after, Rattlesnake, which I still say should be called the Mullet, but I digress. Sumner down into the line. He's one of about half the fields that have not put one down. Let's see what it's going to be. Oh, not going to count a lap. As we come back to Wilson, who's already finishing up his second one. He's lost the pole position. Oh, he's abandoning it. He's going to come in and practice his pit entry. Waldo also going to lose on his second lap. Is anybody going to be able to challenge White, who has also decided to end his lap? I see him grayed out. This is Patrick Calgo, who's down on ninth in his first time. His second one, a 2:14.9. That's much better, and that'll put him into seventh.
Yeah, and it's not often that you'll actually see drivers go faster on the second lap. Normally the first lap is kind of the best one, but obviously for Waldo, that was really not what he would have wanted right there. Obviously spin out right at the end of the lap, because that's meaning now that he's, even if he had a second lap, he won't actually be able to complete a warm-up to start it.
Acosta is currently a second and a half off the pole time, a 2:14.4 for his first run through, as a 2:12.4, and now he has got it by a half a second. Looks like Matthew Long not going to improve. Let's see, we've got Jose Medina coming up next, and he doesn't look on the pace, unfortunately. So that 24 just kind of petering around, and he's not going to have a start time then. Sumner is another one that has lacked a first lap in the 98. Let's see if he's on pace.
Yeah, and obviously starting at the back of the road course is a pretty difficult challenge. There's no automatic caution, so to speak, so there's no opportunity to really catch up that way, and that's why qualifying at road courses is so important in these cars relative to say at ovals. It's obviously still important at ovals, but doubly so at road courses.
Now, what's interesting is we did have reference last round, or the truck race at COTA, because Bradley Holly, of all people, had an end-of-line penalty. Now, he's not here today, but he went from the back of the field to a, I believe, fourth place finish at the end of that race. And that was a similarly sized field to this. Sumner with a 2:16.9 puts him into 12th. About a minute left. Do we have anybody? Yeah, Pat Harvey's got to finish his, and that's it. Nobody else is able to complete a lap. So it looks like it is possible if you've got pace, Christian, but if you're a mid-packer, that's going to be a much harder task.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, at the moment, we've only got 14 times on the board. Hopefully, Pat Harvey will make that 15, but it will be possible to cut your way through the pack if you're starting at the back. It's just, it's not going to be easy to do so, and it's more the field spread that happens on the first lap. If you kind of approximate a second per car, if you're back there in 15th, you're already 15 seconds behind by the end of the first lap, and that's difficult to run down at the best of times, you know, especially when you've only got 33 laps. That means you have to be over half a second, well, not over half a second, but about half a second a lap faster than the leader to even have a shot at it, all while you're passing cars.
Exactly. And by the way, Harvey, we saw jump up to 10th as he was the last one to set a time. The qualifying session ends. So that means it is time to move over to our gridding here today. It's not a full pace lap around here, so don't need to worry about that. But our starting order has Abner Acosta on the pole, with Elliott White starting from second, Josh Daniels in third, and Matthew Long from P4. David Wilson with a good lap in fifth, but Richard Regan Jr. struggling a bit today, starting from P6. Patrick Cowgill will be seventh, followed by Trent Dinkle to his outside, Waldo Walden in ninth, and Pat Harvey rounding out your top 10.
Back in 11th in the first drive in the 216s, Adam Zemke alongside Robert Bissell Jr., another driver who I actually thought might have a little bit of better pace here. He's back in 12th. Charles Sumner, we saw him complete both his laps. He's back in 13th with Brandon Walter in 14th. The last driver to set a qualifying time of 2:24 is Michael Witt in 15th. He'll line up alongside Doug Evans in 16th. Jose Medina, Taylor Stout are in 17th and 18th. Danny Cervantes and Chad Brown are 19th and 20th, and Joao Guerra is in 21st.
So, 21 car field here, and most of them have already lined up behind the Porsche pace car. See if anybody can maybe do a little bit better in qualifying and the race versus their qualifying rather. And we haven't had any change for the temperature. It's still pretty much the same out there. So the drivers don't really have to do much for the setup, I would think, to get them ready to go. And we're just waiting on Cervantes, Brown, and Guerra. We do have some onboards as well. We already saw Trent Dinkle among them. Let's see if who have we got first here amongst our onboards. We'll look at Patrick Cowgill, which someday we need to find out. We need to ask him what that door goes to. Is he actually next to his front door, or what's going on there? And then we're going to Robert Bissell Jr. in the game room, it looks like, judging by his sign. Superman ready to fly today. And I think Richard Regan Jr. going to be up next, another of our VR users getting the car warmed up, ready to go. You're going to see a lot more shifting here today than what we're used to seeing on the normal tracks. So we saw earlier Trent Dinkle is also taking part in our onboard cameras. Hopefully we'll get some fun views throughout with a little bit more work at the wheel to look at tonight.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they've got to let the Porsche pace car come into the pits. It'll give control over to Acosta, the Roadmeister here. He is certainly the ringer in the road courses on the stock cars, and he's been able to prove it over in the trucks. Can he do the same here, where the cars are a little bit different? He's looked good in the warm-up. He's certainly been anticipated by many to be the man to beat. Can he back that up and meet the hype? There goes the pace car. Acosta waiting for that green flag. Takes them fully around the final corner. Checking them up. Waiting for the call. It's a long call for him. And green flag is out. Acosta does not get a good start at all. Look at Elliott White already streaking past him to the outside, trying to defend down to the inside. Josh Daniels fancies his chances. Elliott White is ahead, but deep on the brakes, trying to stay out of him. Acosta can't quite fight back. In fact, he spins the wheels, and now he's going to fall all the way to fifth.
Yeah, very, very easy to do that, and obviously didn't get the jump on the start that he would have wanted, and now he's got a challenge to run down Elliott White. Be interested to see if he can pull away, but good job by everybody getting through turn one. It's been a tricky corner over the past week, I think it's fair to say.
Wow, so Acosta's got work to do. He might have been the quickest by some margin in both previous sessions, but he's really going to have to prove it over the length of a race. Elliott White probably wanting to take advantage of this as best he can, along with a little bit of bobble out of turn 9. That's going to put Josh Daniels all over his rear bumper.
You got to be very, very careful on this first lap. You don't want to run deep into any of these corners, because if you do, you've obviously got the whole train of cars behind you. See there, Pat Harvey. He's now going to be vulnerable down this long straight and already losing a spot.
Now they're fanning out a little bit. White getting some distance from those behind him. Not seeing anybody really near enough to try and attack those ahead of them down into turn 12. Acosta still stuck in 6th place here, partway through the lap, having lost it right in the first corner.
Yeah, and he's got to be careful cutting his way back through the field. I'm pretty certain he's got the pace to do it, but you just don't want to get overly aggressive early on trying to move your way back through. You just got to wait for the opportunity and take it when it happens, rather than forcing it, because if you try and force a pass, you'll just burn up your own tires, and then you'll find out that you actually don't have the pace that you should have after a couple of laps.
So we're told it is definitely a one-stopper tonight. We'll see if that's the case. The trucks actually had a no-stopper as Trent Dinkle is off. Trent Dinkle in turn 19 has discovered the joys of paved runoff and is able to get going, but he'll fall down to 12th.
Oh, we got a car around at the exit of turn 20. It's 67, it's Pat Harvey.
Oh, no. So 2 corners in succession, one with Dinkle, one with Harvey. This is Dinkle, no, this is Harvey first that we're looking at from above. He's going to go by Dinkle, who's just kind of waiting, backing up to get himself some clear air to get going. And send it in deep. Nope, he goosed it.
Yeah, just went around, kind of center exit. It's very easy to do it, but obviously pretty disastrous to do it on the first lap when everybody's packed up all the way to the tail end of the line.
And since then, we've seen one position up from Acosta. That was from Trent Dinkle's mistake. Abner up to 5th. We're going to take a look at Daniels in the meantime. He's falling off of Matthew Long now. He was closer last time through on lap 1. Instead, he's got our championship leader, Richard Regan Jr., giving chase. And we're going to watch from Richard's perspective here, pulling up his onboard as well. Now, this is where I feel like VR would be a huge help, especially at this track with these apexes, Christian.
Oh, absolutely. Pretty much all of these corners at the end of long straights are pretty much blind if you have a single screen, and even with 3 screens, they're not actually a whole lot better. So definitely VR is I don't want to call it an advantage, but it's definitely handy at this racetrack.
Make life a little bit nicer, shall we say, as he gets very close to the back of Josh Daniels. Now, Regan could theoretically put himself out of reach tonight. I need to double check on the points, though, since we don't have many cars, because that might actually counter my point. There might not be enough here for him to clinch the championship, depending on how his rivals score. But, of course, with him having half a win's worth to his name and distance to Long, you could easily make that unreachable coming the final round.
Yeah, I think if he just scores the top 5 here tonight, he should be happy with that. It's going to net him a lot of points. I think he's got pace for a little more than that. I think he might actually be able to get up inside the top 3, but we'll just have to see.
Could be just saving the tires a little bit. I suspect a few that are maybe not running full tilt. Oh, somebody went wide there. I think that was Wilson. I think in the red car that we saw go a little deep into turn 1, but he didn't go off track. He just gets going once again. There's a little bit of a fight in the mid-pack. Looks like Walter and Stout. Remember, Walter kind of lost it early in the race, so he's probably charging his way back through, and indeed, he did take the place into the first corner.
Yeah, interesting. Actually started back in 14th and still is 14th, and Acosta is just past Richard Regan Jr. right before the start of the longest straight on the racetrack.
Ooh. So let's take another look at it. Keeping an eye on this while the replay happens, just in case something changes here. Awful close to the back of him. Ooh, big bobble there from the 46. That's going to open the door. And the 5 is able to just sneak right on by, get himself into 4th. Picking them off one by one. Still some work to do, but he's now only got 3 more cars to try and overtake to get back to where he began this race.
Yeah, and teammates right there, so not keen to really fight each other, but still, obviously, Regan Jr. doesn't want to fall back further than he needs to, but Acosta is trying to get up there and trying to win this race. So it has to be a little bit aggressive, but I would say that was about as mild a pass as you can really make right there. He just had better drive off and pulled alongside and just took the apex away into 11.
27 of Elliott White, who started on the front row, leads yet another lap here at Circuit of the Americas long, keeping him honest with a 0.6 of a second gap. From there, Josh Daniels has not been able to hang. He's fallen to about 2.5 seconds behind. You can see the distance from this onboard with Elliott White looking backwards. For those wondering how the pit stops are likely to play out, we're hearing many expected to try and cut it in half, but if they want to go long, 20 to 22 laps is the range from what we understand.
Yeah, I'm not sure anybody's going to want to stretch it out because
I wouldn't think so.
You'll just lose yourself time with the tire fall off. But I might see a couple of guys do some undercut strategies. But at the moment, it doesn't really look like anybody's kind of stuck behind. Everybody's either in 2-car battles or is kind of strung out. So I don't suspect there's any need for that. You see Acosta's going to the inside of Daniels, pulling the same move again. Once again, Daniels doesn't fight him, same as Richard Regan Jr. beforehand.
Bit of an interesting place to make passes. I'm so used to drivers trying to set themselves up for the breaking down into 12, and I would think that the 5 would be vulnerable trying to get underneath someone into 11, but this time and last time doesn't seem to be the case. The 77 of Daniels, despite poking his nose, isn't close enough, and the 5 is now officially in P3. It's 2.9 seconds up to the overall leader, 2.2 to get to Matthew Long.
Yeah, I think what it is the drivers that Acosta is passing at the moment probably know that he's faster and that they're not going to be able to hold him behind for the entire race distance. So he knows that he can get the car rotated through that S section right before that drop down the hill towards the hairpin. So he's just getting the job done there pretty much because that's where his advantage lies, and it's easy for him to show the nose and pick them off there.
This will be the first lap that we'll see Acosta really in clear air and try and chase down Long. So I'm kind of curious what kind of pace he will be running. His best lap is already better than anybody else's. He's got a 2:12.7 on the board compared to the leaders who are a full second off of his quickest.
Yeah, he was only 0.3 off his qualifying pace, which is pretty impressive in the race. I'm actually surprised that we didn't see drivers kind of doing a little bit more of a slow outlap to get an even faster qualifying time, but the time in the session was short, so a lot of drivers probably kind of weighed the options and went with having the option to run the second lap was better than trying to crawl around the racetrack for a faster first lap.
Through those very tricky S's, trying to avoid those apex curbs as we ride on board with Acosta, closing it down to Matthew Long to less than 2 seconds. Certainly not going to be able to pull his favorite move this time down into 11. As far as hard chargers go, I know Acosta doesn't exactly count on that. I'm checking through to see if anybody has made great inroads, and as we take a look at it, Taylor Stout not doing too bad, but then he also was not allowed to qualify.
Yeah, towards the back end of the field, things have really strung out very, very quickly, actually, and I think that's probably played a bit of a role in that one.
Already into lap 5 out of this 33-lap event today. So we once again swing it into the stadium section. It's already down to 1.6 seconds between Acosta and Long. Nearly a half a second chopped off in half a lap. And those ahead of him are probably thinking this is not an if, but a when.
Yeah, and I don't think they'll be too surprised with that. Obviously, in the truck race, he was strong. It's no surprise that he's strong here in the Cup car as well. And I think that they'll be more than expecting him to catch up to them. And that's actually kind of a key point, really, is that if you know that there's somebody fast in the field who's had a setback, and you know that you're probably not able to match their pace, you don't try and get more because it's not there. You know, like, you can't just force pace out of the car just because a bit of luck has kind of gone your way. You just have to see how the race pans out, run your own pace, and try and not make any mistakes, because obviously Elliott White has still got Matthew Long pretty close to him, and they're going to have their own battle, and that's probably going to run for the entire race.
Just looked at the lap times. White ran a 14.4 and Acosta a 14.3. Not much difference there. Just had an overtake in the first corner. I think that was Trent Dinkle, another one that should be much higher up the order right now. He managed to overtake Cowgill into that one.
Yeah, he's made a good recovery after that half spin on the first lap. Obviously lost a lot of positions, but is back up to where he started.
One past it even now. He's up to 7th. He began in P8 at this event. 5 seconds to make up to get to David Wilson from here. So another driver reaching that clear air. Oh, wow. Acosta looks to be pretty mighty through the S's section. I suddenly look over, and he is right behind the 28.
Yeah, he's very, very good through that kind of 8, 9, 10 section, and then obviously has that opportunity down into 11. Went for a wider apex this time. He got right to the bumper of Matthew Long, but actually fell back in doing so, so probably stuck there for another lap at this point.
Those who haven't watched the Precision Racing League and heard us talk about Acosta before, our first exposure to him was in the Sports Car Championship on Tuesday nights, where he took championships, many wins as well. So when he started showing up in the ovals, everybody kind of raised their eyebrow and weren't sure if this was going to be a Boris Said or if this was going to be a Tony Stewart.
Yeah, and I mean, he's done very, very well. Obviously, at the beginning, kind of when he was running the ovals, long run pace was a little bit of an issue, but as we saw at Darlington, that's been completely rectified. So yeah, it's adapted really, really well, and is now a well-rounded contender, obviously, especially short tracks and road courses are kind of slanted a little bit towards him more than, say, mile and a halves and super speedways are, but he proved at Darlington that he can definitely compete on an oval.
I don't know if that was his teammate that sat him down and helped teach him a few things or what, but it showed up in Dover last week as well. His long run helped him immensely as everybody else around him fell, including, ironically, Richard Regan Jr., who wasted his stuff early and suddenly found himself struggling with the car. Right now, Regan doing decently okay with a top 5 on the car. Is going to rack up those valuable points, although he will lose a few to Matthew Long if they finish as they are now. But Long looks like he's going to lose a few points the way that Acosta has chopped away at this lead and is now sizing up the second-place driver.
Yeah, it doesn't look like he's close enough this time, but might actually be able to stay closer through 11 without kind of having that passing opportunity. Might have something 10, 12. It looks like Matthew Long's driven in pretty deep, but then Acosta's kind of followed him a little bit.
Target fixation, so even the best can fall victim to it. These cars do not like to stop in the first place. He's going to follow him down the backstretch, but this isn't looking likely, at least at this stage. As long as this straight is, these things have a lot of grunt, and they certainly fly down it pretty quickly. So yeah, he's going to sit back behind, still at about 2.6 seconds behind our overall leader, Elliott White. Acosta last time with a 2:14.9 versus the 2:15.2 for White. So he is definitely pulling closer to him.
Yeah, and the thing is not kind of overdoing it, trying to pull this pass for second. Obviously, we've seen he's now been there for a couple of laps at this point. But it comes back to just not pushing too hard in trying to pass somebody. You know, if the pace is there, that you're going to eventually get them anyway. And obviously, you can see that Elliott White's still within sight of him, so there's no real need to kind of get this done quickly.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious your thoughts on how Acosta is doing with the pushing. Does it look like he's stressing the car too hard to try and make up these spots, or does it seem like he's managing, balancing the two desires well?
Honestly, it looks like he's just managing. I think if an opportunity comes up, he's going to go for it, but if one doesn't kind of naturally appear with a mistake from long, I think he's probably going to be content to sit there at least for another 5 or 6 laps, or until Elliott White starts to pull away, if he starts to pull away. And that's the thing. If nobody's going anywhere, then there's not really a need to force the pass. It looks like he's going to have an opportunity this lap, though. It's just so strong through the S's, particularly actually this next section. He gets the uphill switchback really, really well. Is able to carry a lot more momentum through there than pretty much anybody else out there.
Don't need to go to it, but Taylor Stout lost a spot on lap 7 when he spun in the stadium section. Didn't hit anything. He's back rolling again. A little bit shaky coming off of turn 9 there from Abner Acosta, as he seems to be hustling at least a little bit to try and find something. Maybe set himself up for the exit, much tighter to the apex compared to Long, and he's already beside him. He won't even really get the slipstream here. This is going to be a side draft instead.
Yeah, he should be able to get him here, but this is trickier than it looks. Obviously, it's a very, very long straight, very fast braking zone into somewhat of a downhill corner, so you got to be careful to not overshoot this.
Is he going to make it? Yeah, looks like he is nice and crisp to that apex. Move Acosta back into second, and now he sets his sights on Elliott White. Can he manage to chase down that 27 hailing from California? He's still got plenty of race left to do it as well. We're not even really, I think, yeah, we're still outside of the pit window right now, if that tells you anything. So I kind of wondered early on if Abner would have to worry about trying to undercut drivers ahead of him and then manage the tires to the end. But frankly, it doesn't look like he'll need to be concerned about that at all.
Yeah, we're just coming up to about a quarter through the race, and he's already back up to second with only 1 car to go, so I don't think he's going to need to undercut. He might want to undercut Elliott White, but I don't think he's going to need to do so. It's not as though he's stuck at the back of a train of cars.
No, not the laps that he's been setting. He still holds that fastest lap easily. We'll see if that stays the same once drivers put on fresh tires around here, though. The good news is that the temperatures have been steadily declining on the track surface. It's already down to 102 Fahrenheit, so they're getting a little bit of respite from those scorching hot tarmac temperatures here in the Texas sun. Now that he's ahead of Matthew Long, not running away from him quite like I thought he would, although it is up to half a second. This is his favorite spot. Let's see if this really gives him the advantage.
Yeah, it's particularly these 2 corners and this cut back to the left. He's just very strong through there, and you see he's able to get the power down and not struggling with rear end grip, and you can see the gap open up as he does so.
He gained 3/10 alone on those couple corners. That was impressive. Make that 4/10 now, up to a full second ahead of Matthew Long. Still have 18 cars out in the field. Jose Medina is our final runner currently in the 24. So despite a few spins here and there, I haven't seen too bad of dramas quite yet, keeping fingers crossed and knocking on wood that we don't have a bad incident from the drivers and we keep them all running. We do have a pass between Besaw Jr. and Walden right now, and I think that's Besaw getting the overtake done on the 84.
Yeah, moves himself up to 9th.
Another case of what you were just talking about, the importance of getting the grip off of turn 9. Walden's not going to have it, and Besaw is.
Yeah, and it is surprising to see that kind of section of the track is what's looking to be kind of the most important and the passing place. It's not as though you can't pass in other places, but that one seems to be everybody's preferred, and I think it's just because it's a test of 2 things. It's a test of how good a response you've kind of got from the front end, especially in the switchback and whatnot, and obviously that's kind of a good indicator of how much front grip you've got as well in the tires. But then coming up over the top of the hill is a test of rear grip and how well you can put the power down, and it's kind of combining those 2 things that sort of shows up both how good the driver is and how good the car is, and I think that's why it's sort of the biggest differentiator around the racetrack.
Is it just me? Yeah, I think Besaw has a motion rig. That is very cool. Just noticed that he was getting some little inputs there, bodily, as he comes back onto the front stretch. One thing I'm also curious about here, Christian, is some of the truck drivers started talking post-race about the setup of the gearing. Now, they have a fixed setup. These guys do not. This is open setup. And they commented that they didn't really feel like first gear was worth much through many of the corners. In fact, I think Acosta said that he kept it in second, even in the slow corners. Have you found that that's a viable strategy here in the Cup cars, even with an open setup?
Yeah, I mean, the thing with the gearing at this track is you're heavily compromised. Obviously, first through fourth is a fixed set of ratios, and we only allow you to change the rear end gear. Well, I should say that even in the real life spec, the fourth gear is always a 1-to-1, so that's kind of always fixed on the rear end ratio and whatnot. But the real life guys have the option to kind of select what they want for first through third. And yeah, I was actually talking about this a little bit as well in the lead up to this race in terms of that perhaps our first through third selection is not the greatest for this racetrack. It doesn't match up very well actually when it comes to these sections and whatnot. As you say, first tends to kind of not work that well, and second and third are spaced quite closely, I would say, but you get the struggle comes in selecting what you need to get to the end of this particular straight that we see Biso coming to the end of, and actually overshooting a little bit right there. That straight is so long that really compromises what you want to run for a final drive, and that's why it's kind of poorly matched in terms of gear ratios, because you've got a lot of these slow speed corners and then you've got that super long straight, and you kind of have to cover all of them with not many gears.
Ooh, side-by-side racing between Wilson and Dinkle, almost called him Winkle. And Trent is going to be able to get himself back into sixth. Nice recovery. I want to say he was all the way down to 12th at one point. I'm trying to remember how many positions he lost. Not a place you often see overtakes into 19. And he was facilitated a little bit. The 39 didn't really fight him. But that will give the 501 a sixth place.
Yeah, nice pass and a nice recovery actually. Obviously the first lap to have a big slide is really not what you want. And yeah, it's moved his way through the field quite nicely since.
Watching from on board Dinkle once again. Let's see how his S's section compares to what we saw. And also, I believe he has a 3-monitor setup comparatively to the others. Certainly trying to use that well to look down to the apexes and up and around over the blind crest down the hill. He's well clear of Wilson, so he was much better pace than that 39. We can't see it from here, but he is far back already.
Yeah, and it looks like he's got it hooked up pretty well. A little bit wide there at 11, but no big deal. And gets off the corner and doesn't look like he's really fighting for rear end grip either.
Can we take a glance back at White and Acosta and maybe get a lap comparison? Abner is reeling him in. The gap is much closer. I'm kind of curious how consistent it's been, though, approaching the back of him. They are going to reach some lap traffic. Jose Medina, with recent spins, is suddenly coming up in front of them. And yeah, White was actually almost a 10th quicker on lap 8, but otherwise pretty consistently, in fact, close to a full second slower on lap 9.
Yeah, it's a 10th faster on 8, but obviously then gave back 7 of those on 9. But the pace difference is quite small, actually. Biso Jr.'s just had a moment at the exit of 12. He's lost 2 spots. Oh,
no. Remember, he had a problem there last lap, too. Why don't we take a replay of this one, see if it was similar, or maybe he had a different sort of mistake. Gonna watch from on board. Talk us through it, Christian.
Well, I kind of saw the aftermath of it where he was to the inside of the corner, so I'm expecting what I'm going to see is he might actually just kind of gas it up on exit and half loop it around. We'll have to see. But looks okay so far. Maybe a little bit deep on the entry. Oh, actually goes around under braking. Nice slide and recovery, though, not to go all the way around. I think he'll probably be quite happy to only have that quarter spin from that.
Getting a little bit of behind-the-scenes information about those sets, by the way. Apparently, drivers complaining on the radio that these sets are worse to handle than the truck's fixed sets. Go figure on that. Taking a look at Waldo, one of those that overtook Bisaw and Zemke. And Waldo's actually right where he started this race. Zemke up 1 position. Besaw is up 1 as well as they work their way through the S's. Definitely closer between Walden and Zemke than it is back to Besaw.
Yeah, we'll have to see if Besaw can kind of catch up to them. I'm not sure whether he was being ran down or whether he was starting to pull away, but obviously the gap was pretty close between the 3 of them even before Besaw had his kind of quarter spin. Yeah, I mean, on the setups and whatnot, well, you've got a lot more power in this car, and the truck's got that massive spoiler on the back, so yeah, they're going to be easier to drive.
84 around just off the apex, and it looks like Zemke likes his chances, sizing him up. We'll get a little bit of slipstream as they pick up the pace up to already 150 miles an hour, and they're only halfway down, flying towards the braking zone, but he doesn't seem to be close enough to attack. That blue 57 will hang back for the time being. So we're getting close to that halfway mark where we expect most drivers to pit, which should be around 16, 17, and 18. Acosta once again edging forward, a 2:15.6 versus White's 2:15.8. That chops it down to 9/10.
Yeah, and I kind of thought that this might be inevitable, but now I'm not that sure. Obviously, Acosta is a little bit faster, but he's actually only a little bit faster. As long as White doesn't make mistakes, he's not massively running him down and just going to cruise around the outside of him in the S's or something crazy like that. He's having to work to close this gap, and I mean, he's been pretty measured as he's been kind of moving back through the field, but it's taken him 13 laps to kind of get back within striking distance of the lead. So if Elliott White can execute a good pit stop and has stronger long run pace in the second half of the race, he might actually be able to take the fight to Acosta.
Fascinating stuff. So we've already hit lap 13, down into 11 once again. Credit to Matthew Long behind them. He's only about 4 seconds back. So he's been clinging on, making sure that he's at least still up there in case the 2 of them have an incident and can take advantage. There you can see him in the background, just coming up and over the hill, but braking hard now down into 12, down to 0.5 of a second now. Acosta's starting to get within reach.
Yeah, it's obviously closed that gap down. And I should qualify my statement on that by saying that hot lap pace is not race pace, and that's not long run pace either. So even though Acosta's fastest lap is probably, well, is a second faster than Elliott White's race pace is pretty strong, and he can overlap towards the end of the run. So that's really what I'm meaning by that. He's not out of this fight just because Acosta's kind of ran him down in 13 laps.
We might have a pass between Walden and Zemke here, because Zemke is right up on top of the 84, and they're coming down to 12, where we're used to seeing overtakes. He's taking a look, but he's not getting the overlap, and he'll come back to the racing line.
Yeah, but it was interesting there because it kind of slowed everybody down, and Besaw Jr. looked like he was about to overshoot the corner, but because the pair ahead was so slow, it's actually brought him back to the back end of Zemke here.
Walden poking and prodding, but still doesn't have the chance that he wants. So maybe could have had it over and under, but parking it on the exit. Zemke finds Walden right where he wants to place the car. He'll still get some more chances. This is the closest we've seen him in a bit. I'm keeping an eye on that as well as Acosta, because Acosta's also down to about 0.4 of a second. Down into the final corner, up and around onto the main straight. Can Zemke maybe do it here? Doesn't look like he's near enough, but he's coming up to another one of those tricky braking zones. Could try and juke him. Not quite.
Yeah, I thought that Waldo had kind of ran a little bit deeper, but now it looks like Acosta might have a chance down here in 12.
Might have a chance, but yeah, he's starting to lose a little bit of distance. So won't be this corner unless White really makes a mess of it, and he's not going to. He's going to stay nice and tidy. Acosta now down to 0.3 of a second. Just about a car length between the pair of them. Getting close to that halfway mark. If you are white, Christian, do you maybe try and pull one over on Acosta and take an early stop?
No, I don't think you do. I think you just run your own race and you kind of pit around the halfway point, and if Acosta undercuts you or overcuts you, that's kind of it, you know. When it comes to the car in second place, if I'm Acosta, I just actually wait until white pits. I'll just run as long as he does and then go one more lap or something like that, you know. So there's not really much that white can do. If he tries to force an early stop, it's not really going to help him because Acosta will just run to the halfway point. So I think you just stick to your own strategy and you run your own race, and if it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, it doesn't. You know, the biggest thing is you're still out here racing the racetrack, and it is, as he takes a hefty amount of curb there in a one, and actually struggled a little bit to get the power down because of that. But that's the thing. It's so hard to just get around the track. It's kind of how we were saying at Darlington, where you're trying to get around the track first and then you're racing everybody else second, and it's the same thing with road courses in these cars.
Chasing him through the S's. What about his favorite spot? Let's see if that's the one he goes for. Does he set him up here? He's pulled this move a couple times already throughout the race. Doesn't look like he's got it just as much as he did on the other ones. He's a little too far back, so the 5 stays behind in second. And the pit window, for those curious, is open if anybody wants to dare try and take an early stop, but we're not seeing any of them yet. Again, we're expecting most of them within the next 3 or 4 laps for drivers to come down the lane. Hopefully they practice their pit entry, though. I've seen too many people throw it away into that little hairpin.
Yeah, it's surprisingly difficult, actually. I will say that. The outside wall comes up on you really quite quickly in the pit entry, so if you haven't practiced it, you better be conservative on the entry or you're definitely going to go into the fence.
Losing a little time now. Acosta back to 0.8 of a second briefly. I wouldn't think that the aero wake is really too much of an issue in these things, but now that he's gotten close, I just haven't seen him do anything with it.
Well, Zemke's had to run wide at 11. It's like Bissell Jr. passed. Like he was about to run up on the back of Waldo Walden right there and duck to the outside to avoid hitting him.
We're going to take a look at the replay. Yeah, I think Bissell took the better of 2 options there. Knew he was going deep. Just decided to let the car run straight, use that paved runoff. Ran the rim. This is not Formula E. He is not taking his charge, and he is going to have to slot in behind Waldo Walden and Robert Bissell Jr.
So you're saying that he doesn't have fan boost?
Thank God. Meanwhile, man, Acosta's still losing. It was up to 0.9 of a second briefly. Now it cuts back down to 7 because he's in his comfort zone here in the S's. What is going on with the 5?
Well, the thing is, when you run somebody down and then you end up right behind them, you can kind of end up in that situation where you can't even really see your own line that well. And if it disrupts your own rhythm, you kind of end up with this loss of pace, and it's actually really frustrating because you know that you can go faster, but it almost seems like the pace just is impossible to get, and it's all because you can't see and your rhythm's getting disrupted by that car ahead.
Had an overtake for Dinkel. If we go back about 40 to 50 seconds into turn 1, Richard Regan in the 46, not able to hold back the 501. Here it is right here. And wow, this is from a long ways back. Look at this. And he made the apex too.
I was going to say, I'm wondering if he's making the apex, but he made it and cleanly as well. There wasn't even a hint of a lockup.
Wow. So I don't know if Regan maybe just kind of decided to roll over and let him have it, as we now see both of them coming down the back stretch, shifting through the gears. Another thing I love, the difference between setups. We got the old school H pattern and the paddle shifters. Both of them looking down to the apex, then wheeling it through the corner. Dinkel is now up to 5th place with that overtake. It's 8 seconds up to Josh Daniels. I'll keep an eye and see if his pace is quicker than that 77. I heard our first call for the pits. It was Michael Witt. He's one of our drivers farther down the field. So obviously he's got nothing to lose to maybe try and take an earlier stop.
Yeah, he was actually just getting lapped by the leaders right there, so ducked into the pit lane.
Oh, and Long is in. Long is in as we watch this battle get closer. Acosta's recovered. Those tires are underneath him again. Hearing a few drivers chit-chatting over the radio, some of them alerting others that they're coming into pit lane. Might be hearing a lot more of that over the airwaves in the next 2 or 3 laps. But Abner Acosta, whatever was plaguing him, has gone away, and he's back putting the pressure onto the 27.
Yeah, he might have a good chance here. It looked like White was just a little bit wide there. Has got it cut back, but yeah, Acosta's got quite a nice run here, and we'll have to see if he can get to the inside into 11.
Sizing him up. He's going to poke his nose. He'll send it in deep. He's got the inside. Can he get the exit, though? Over, under, maybe, from Elliott White. Both of them spinning the tires up, trying to get the throttle down. It's a drag race from here, down the longest straight of the track. White already pulling back into the slipstream. Doesn't seem like he's got it. He'll keep his nose out. And yes, the 5 since the first lap has finally gotten himself back into the lead.
Yeah, I expect we'll see both of them pit this time by. This is kind of the second half of the halfway strategy. Obviously, with it being a 33-lap race, you can't actually split it dead in half, but the guys who pit at the end of 16, they're kind of doing a 17-lap run to the end, whereas these guys will be doing probably a 16-lap run. That's if they pit. I expect they will.
I'm kind of expecting the same. Long, as I mentioned already in, Cowgill has pitted. Besaw, Walden, Sumner. Walter is the most recent to come in. Here comes the pit entry. Both of them taking a lot of curb down to the inside of turn 19. And both of them diving in very deep. Can they make the corner? Yeah, they're going to get it in.
Yeah, that was very, very late by Elliott White. Actually nearly tried to go for the pass on the run to the cone. It looked like Acosta had kind of slowed up and was running at pit speed, actually, before he was technically in the pit lane.
And Acosta, thankfully, has his pit stall beyond. Oh, is he still going to kind of squeeze him down? Now, thankfully, okay, they should be clear there, and they can ghost each other. Who is going to be able to get out quicker, because this is very tight into there. We could see White jump him. Let's not forget about Long, who's already taken his stop and has been on fresh tires. Off goes Richard Regan Jr., or excuse me, Acosta rather. Richard Regan does not pit. He is ahead of him and inherits the lead. And Acosta ahead of White. Oh, nope, Long was nowhere near to them.
Yeah, why is Long nowhere near to them, actually? He's really, really far back. He should have definitely been closer than this.
His pit stop time was comparable to theirs, not seeing too much different. Yeah, that's almost exactly within the same second of both Acosta and White. He was dropping time. I think he was about this far back, about 6 seconds, but I would have thought on fresh tires, he'd close, what, maybe a second, maybe 2?
Yeah, I would totally expect them to gain about 2, perhaps even 2.5 to 3 seconds there by pitting 1 lap earlier. So surprised that he wasn't at least kind of in the frame as they got down to turn 1.
Still waiting on a few others. Zemke hasn't pit. Harvey just came in. Stout is actually coming into pit lane. Doug Evans is the last of those. We mentioned Regan Jr. too. There's the 46 on screen right now. Not looking like he's going to be able to take this win, despite him having the most of anybody this season, 3 currently. Connor Hall, the only other one with multiple wins this season on 2. Everybody else has just chalked up a single victory in this 10-race season. Regan's actually, he's about to get caught on track by Acosta.
Yeah, and I'm kind of surprised, actually, that Regan isn't isn't a little bit closer to the pace here, because we've seen at road courses in the past he's not slow. He's been able to pick up wins. So yeah, kind of surprising that this one's maybe not working out so good for him.
Doesn't seem like a fair trade. His teammates gotten quicker on the ovals, and he's gotten slower on the road courses. Oh, he locks him up! Does he avoid the barrier? It was tight. Whoa, let's get an onboard replay of that one.
I definitely thought he was going straight into the Tech Pro.
I thought so too. There it is right there. It just gripped up as he lifted the brakes, and he's into his stall now. Oh, not sure how much that's going to cost him in time. Daniels is going to easily overtake him. We know Dinkel passed him on track before the pit stops, and he's already undercut him. So there goes Dinkel. Zemke is pitting at the same time, so he's not going to be a threat. Wilson Jr. is actually going to come out very close to Regan.
Yeah, but Regan will have the tire advantage, so I expect that we'll see him pull away now.
What that did do is release our top two. Acosta is ahead of White. Let's take another view of Regan here, looking at the difference on the pit exit. Oh! Two-wheeling it.
Big strike of the curb, and we've seen that the pit exit is not actually the easiest thing at this racetrack. There may have been one driver who had quite a spectacular pit exit in the Coca-Cola iRacing series. Went straight across turn one and into the outside tires, and don't know how he got there, but was able to salvage it and still finish in the top 10, I think.
That wasn't you, was it?
No, I have thankfully never had to race this track in competition in one of these cars.
As we once again glance at the leaders, the Costa up to about 6/10, now 7/10 of a second ahead of Elliott White. Pit stop should be done from here. Anybody else coming on in has had a problem and is not scheduled. And first full flying lap out of pit lane for these two. Let's see what the comparison is going to be like on those times. Acosta across with a 2:11.9, White with a 2:12 flat. That's very close, and the good news for White is that actually was his personal best.
Yeah, and this is kind of what I was talking about in terms of if White can hang on, it's role reversal, and Costa probably does have a little bit more raw pace, but if White can just be there in the event of any mistakes, then this isn't over.
Now, viewers might be wondering, wait a minute, Acosta had a faster lap by 1/10. How come he didn't get the fastest lap and Elliott White just did? Well, Acosta must have had an off track somewhere. That will discount your fastest lap. So drivers looking for that bonus point out here can't do a Max Verstappen. They have to keep it clean and within the boundaries if they want it to count.
Yeah, absolutely, and obviously there's quite a few places around this racetrack where it's quite easy to pick up the 1X and invalidate that time, and that's probably actually locked that in for Elliott White, to be honest, because the drop-off even on the second lap is severe enough that he's likely not, and when I say he, I mean Abner Acosta, he's likely not going to be able to run a faster time this time by.
Well, that'll be probably a bit of an annoyance for Acosta, but a minor thing after he's looking now at back-to-back victories in the Cup Series and 3 in a row in PRL's Oval Series. This man is on a roll. Now, as far as the championship goes, though, he's so far back coming into this round. Make some good points on Richard Regan Jr. He's already 5th in the points right now. So we're not expecting Abner to really be any sort of threat. Really, it's between Regan, Long, and maybe James O'Brien. And O'Brien is not here today. Long is, however, going to gain some points on Regan as he's looking at 3rd place versus Regan currently sitting in 6th. Looks like we get a nice little battle in the midfield. We've been.
Oh, Zemke's had a huge moment.
That's not how you take turn 10. He's going to get it whipped around. And he's got such a big gap back to Sumner, he's not going to catch him for a bit, although it looks like he will get by as we come to the replay. What happened?
He was on the left side curb. There's kind of a big depression there on that curb, and if you're kind of in that zone, it will hook you around as you come through it. You can see it there. Yeah, actually, it looked like he was going around kind of before that, but right as we went to that, I don't think we've ever commentated cursed somebody that fast before.
I wasn't talking about how good he was doing quite yet. So the 57 preemptively pulled that one on us. He's still got about 12 or 13 laps to go in this race, so hopefully those tires can cool back down and he can get those under control. You can see Sumner just ahead of him inherits his 11th position. So checking on the points race as we look at 6th as well. This is Richard Regan Jr. ahead of Wilson, but by about 2 seconds, so they got some distance between them currently. 43 points for a win, I believe, before any of the bonus points, but the max is 49, if I'm seeing correctly, of what they can earn. Long in second place should get a 42-point swing, and we don't know what his bonus points will be until the end of the race. Whereas Regan, let's see, 2, 41, 40, it'll be, I believe he'll score about 38 points. 37,
small
I think.
gain for Matthew Long, but nothing massive.
Yeah, nothing to write home about, but he'll take anything he can get, I'm sure. As I also imagine he's probably kind of relegated himself to a second place in the championship, knowing that it just is going to take Regan having some sort of massive issue in the last round, especially since his drop week right now is still a full 19 points, and they cannot drop the last week, the final round. So that's the one where all he's got to do is just play it safe and cruise home.
We just had a huge moment down at turn 12, I believe it is, the end of the long straight.
Is that Zemke and Sumner?
No, it was actually, I believe it was Waldo Walden and a car that I think it was Michael Witt, went hard right.
Okay. Let's see. Yeah, there's out of 11. This is Witt in the 26.
And,
now he's a lap
Cowgill
down.
actually ahead of him.
Yeah, but it's Witt returning to the track. Witt went way off. Watch this. Now, our director is familiar with this sort of incident. That is, that happened to a family member of his. A little bit more dramatically, though.
I believe the hood decided it wanted to open right in that one.
Yes. If you ever get to have a root beer alongside Sean Ambrose, ask him about turn 12 at Coda and his brother, and he'll regale you with a story. Meanwhile, Patrick Cowgill earns a spot. Well, did he earn a spot, actually? He was ahead of him already. He's actually in 8th place. I guess he just gets some breathing room between himself and those that are with him. We got a nice little fight between Josh Daniels and Trent Dinkle. Man, what a charge has it been for this blue and white machine. Daniels, wasn't he 8 seconds ahead when he overtook Regan?
Yeah, and obviously Dinkle had that half spin as well on the first lap, and he's got really good pace. His best lap's 2:13.1, which our leader's best lap's 2:12, zeros and ones, but still that puts him actually 3rd in terms of raw pace. So I don't think he's going to get to the back of Matthew Long, but I definitely think he's going to have a shot at getting Josh Daniels here and taking home 4th.
I love to give credit to Dinkle as well, because every time we've gone on board with him, he's actually looked very calm. The wheel hasn't looked too crazy, not slicing around, especially like we saw in the trucks on those onboards. There was some serious hand movement happening that day. But this looks like a Sunday drive for him.
Yeah, there's pretty much two styles of driving I've noticed with stock cars on road courses. You get one group of drivers who will try and be as smooth as possible, and I kind of try and fall into that side of things. And then you'll get another group of drivers who have no idea how they get the lap time out of the car they do, but they look like they are soaring on it every single corner, and yet somehow they're getting it around the track. He goes super deep into one, but looks like he might be actually pulling that one off. That was really far back.
Taking notes if I ever race Dinkel and Acosta. Look out for Acosta into turn 11 and Dinkel into turn 1, because they are unstoppable forces into those two corners. So Trent up to P4 after starting this race in 8th. Now, did he mess up his qualifying? His first lap was messed up, so maybe that's what put him a little bit out of position there. You mentioned the second one tends to be kind of slower.
Yeah, his qualifying was quite substantially slower than his practice time. Actually, it was almost 2 seconds slower. So, yeah, not a great qualifying by him. That put him back in 8th. And then obviously on that first lap, coming out of 19, I believe it was, he had that half spin. He did get it back going pretty quickly, but just with it being the first lap and everybody being bunched together, it was quite a big loss. He fell outside of the top 10.
Our leaders are starting to get into the thick of traffic right now. Acosta just went past Stout, who is 15th. He's closing in on Brandon Walter in 14th. Then, after that, they should be able to get away from all the other cars. Michael Witt is pulling it into the pits for a second time. And I think, I'm not sure if he's parking it, because we did see him go off, but I don't think he hit the wall. And we've got a very unusual problem out on the track. Doug Evans has his radio button stuck. It's everybody else who's got their radio on has Doug Evans' name plastered across their screen right now. There it goes. Now they have it fixed. Or I thought he did for a second. Now it's back.
No, it appears that he is occupying all of the radio space right now.
I have to admit, this is one I have never seen before. I've seen intentionally chit-chatting on the radio and people getting annoyed at you. And Evans almost looked like he was going slow for a moment, like he's maybe trying to figure what's going on.
I imagine he is. It looks like he's pulling over trying to fix it, but it's still not fixed. This is why it is a good idea to have mute all as a mapped button as he spins out trying to resolve the problem.
Yeah, I'm starting to agree with you now. Yeah,
I think he's going to pull into pit road to fix this.
What a horrible thing to have ruin your race. Poor Doug Evans. Hopefully, I'd love to get to talk to him after a race at some time, just to maybe give him a little consolation of getting to have a chat after the race, because that stinks. Although I would be lying as if I said I wasn't giggling inside at what just happened.
Yeah, this is one of those moments where you kind of rip the headset off your head trying to fix it and stop it.
Okay, so the 5 looks to be clear of the traffic now. Yeah, he's past Brandon Walter. So is Elliott White. Clear road in front of him. And with 10 laps to go, it is sunny days for the number 5. Looking for a three-peat of victories if he can keep ahead of Elliott White. Now, we shouldn't give it to him quite yet, because credit to the 27, much like we saw in that first run, Christian, he's actually holding on to him. He's not right up on that bumper, but at 2.5 seconds, that can be gobbled up.
Yeah, that only takes one lap car to check up Acosta, and he's right back there, or just one mistake. And that's really the deal, that he's just got to stay near him, just in case that happens. I doubt it's going to. Obviously, now Acosta's in the lead. The advantage is firmly swung towards him, but it can happen. And yeah, exactly. Elliott White's showing that he does have a very strong long-run pace. I mean, the pair of them have just checked out on the rest of the field. Matthew Long is 17.5 seconds behind them.
Long just didn't have it in the end, but he is still on the podium. Now, before, I thought that it was going to be too hard for Dinkel to chase down Daniels, but he chopped off 8 seconds. This is a much harder task, but I see that 16-second gap between Long and Dinkel, and I'm not willing to second-guess the 501 another time.
I'm going to. I think that's too much. You know, with less than 10 laps to go, I just don't see it happening. It's going to take a big mistake from Matthew Long for that gap to be closed up.
let's get a lap comparison just to see what it looks like in the last 5 laps, and what kind of inroads Dinkel could make to appeal to our curiosity, because I do think he's probably going to close in on him from what I'm seeing on my screen, that his lap times do look a little bit better than the 28s. So we follow the Chevy through there. That is a pit comparison, in case anybody was curious, and Long actually was quicker than the 501. Here we go. I think we're getting it coming up now. There is the lap comparison. And yeah, Long is consistently slower. Some of them quite slower, a 1.5 seconds on lap 22. But yeah, that's not going to be enough. He's going to have to hope for Matthew to make a mistake to actually get close enough to overtake him. But that should, get down to easily within less than 10 seconds.
Yeah, I feel quite confidently about this one. They're certainly more confident on making this call than I do any cryptocurrency purchases I might have made the last week or so. So I don't think he's going to close this gap. And also, for fans of Doug Evans, it appears that the radio issue was so severe that he had to actually leave the session to fix it.
Only our second DNF. Michael Witt was the first. And Medina looked like he was going to exit the race after he took another pit stop, but he is back out and rolling in 16th. Yeah, that is the first time I've ever had DNF due to radio malfunction. As we watch with 8 laps to go, having just come by the line and down through the S's. We're going to jump a little bit farther back, where we've got a slightly better battle for 14th. Walter being chased by Taylor Stout.
Yeah, and this would be the battle for the lucky dog if we had automatic cautions on. And there's been some interesting moments here. Taylor Stout had one out of turn 1 a couple of laps ago where he didn't quite go around, but he lost a significant chunk of time. And it looks like Brandon Walter's taking advantage of that.
I'm pretty sure that Stout, with his lack of qualifying, is probably a little bit quicker than Walter, but he is still down in 15th. I would have thought he'd make better inroads. That's going to get you a cut course penalty. And Stout will no longer be right on his tail.
Yeah, there's an early apex, and then there's that. So, yeah, that's going to be a little bit of a disadvantage to him right there. And in terms of interesting DNFs, yeah, it's been quite the day for that, I think, actually. If anybody knows what I'm talking about. I don't think I've ever seen a car retire from a race because the wheel's been stuck on.
All right, I'll have to check into that one next, as we once again look at Acosta, and now he has turned up the wick. Elliott White is a full 4 seconds behind Abner Acosta. Whatever he was doing to cling to the back of that 5, he's run out of steam. And I think at this stage, Acosta has firm control of the race, coming down to 7 laps to go now.
Yeah, the last couple of laps, Acosta 13.7 versus Elliott White's 14.9, so that's where a lot of that gap's come from. But it does look like it's kind of been a slow bleed for Elliott White. He was there, and then he started to drop back a little bit, and obviously then has had a fairly large mistake to lose over a second in a single lap.
Let's also take a glance at our hard chargers once again. We haven't done that since early in the race, and I'm curious who's made the best gains. And it appears that Stout is the man on that one, up 5 positions from the beginning, although I'm not quite understanding, because I'm seeing 20 cars in there and only 18 are showing up on my timing screen. I had a couple no starts there, so that helped him in that gain. And then, of course, also that is close to being matched by Trent Dinkel, up 4 positions from his start, 8th to 4th, where he seems to have finally hit the brick wall of overtakes.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like Trent Dinkel's hard charger is a little bit unfairly registered there, because he did fall outside of the top 10 on the first lap. So yeah, I started higher up, but has arguably made a bigger charge through the field.
Soup, if you're watching, we need your input. He's always the one railing against drivers who fail to qualify, but is qualifying but not doing it well count as our charger? Another question on our docket. What an unusual race we've had. We've had some questions and occurrences that we've never seen, which almost always happens at least once a week here on the channel, but I don't think we've ever seen them happen quite so much in the same race.
It's definitely been a night for it, that's for sure. And yeah, I'd like to know the answer to that. See, actually, Stout's just gone wide a little bit there to let Matthew Long by.
Soup is our authority on these matters, apparently, in the last few years on GSRC. Soup, we miss you on air. Can't wait to have you back on soon. As we come down to 6 laps to go for Abner Costa. So long to get around here. This is where I have to think that the 5 is probably just, this has become a slog. He knows he's got the pace. He knows he can take home this win, but he's just counting down the laps.
Yeah, it is obviously a very, very long lap, especially in a stock car. It's well over 2 minutes. And it's so strange because it kind of doesn't necessarily feel like it, which sounds a little bit odd, but there's so much coming at you that you don't really notice that the lap is, well, you notice that the lap's long in terms of technical corners and whatnot, but you kind of, I'm always surprised at just how long it actually is.
It is quite a track to try and tackle, and I've done it in the Lotus 49s, which interestingly are comparable on pace to these machines. Going to take another look at Wilson now, because he's starting to gain on Richard Regan Jr. This might be another point lost for the 46. Wilson is slightly out of position. I think he had a spin on lap 1 or 2, if I'm remembering correctly. And he's been chasing down those ahead of him for some time. Started from 5th. He's looking at a P6 if he can get this done in the last 6 laps.
Yeah, and Regan Jr. really wild right there. He's ran pretty wide and has lost actually not as much time as I thought he was going to lose right there. Normally when you get out of sequence through the S's, you just bleed time off when it happens. And I'm a little bit surprised that Wilson Jr. has been able to get back to Regan Jr. here, because Regan Jr. does have fresher tires, which is a big deal at the road course.
Can't pull off the same trick that Acosta did. Not very good down through 9 and 10 and into 11. Both of them just giving the apex a miss down through that entry to the back stretch. As they pick up speed, it stays at that frustrating 0.8 of a second between Wilson and Regan. Do they have any lap traffic in front of them, I wonder? No, I'm not seeing any. So basically, this is up to them to get over with and decide amongst themselves.
Yeah, absolutely, and obviously with 5 to go, somebody right on your tail is not what you want, but I think even if Regan Jr. loses this position, it's not really a big deal for him. I think overall, though, he's going to be kind of disappointed. I think he would have expected a top 5 at minimum around here.
I agree. This is just something is unusual unless he didn't get the practice time that he usually wants, or maybe this track just doesn't work with him as well as some of the other road courses. Whatever it is, the 46 is not shining as brightly as he typically does, coming down to that 5 to go marker now himself and crossing the line. In fact, to give you an idea of the difference in pace, he's a full minute. He's half a lap behind from Abner Acosta.
Yeah, he's obviously fallen off quite a bit. He's running 2 minute 16s, whilst Acosta's running 2 minute 14s out in the lead.
Out and around the first corner, Wilson lost a few tenths through that last portion of the lap and then gained him right back into the first corner. See if there's much difference down through the S's between this pair. Boy, after watching Formula One here for so many years, this feels pedestrian.
It absolutely does, and it feels that way when you drive it as well. It's just so slow through the car that it feels like you're crawling through the corners. But if you try and push, there's just nothing there. You know, you don't actually gain anything. You just run wide from all the apexes and you go slower. So the kind of the neater and tidier you can be through that section, the faster I've always found it to be.
No gain. In fact, a loss from Wilson, up to 1.1 seconds through that sequence. This might not, in fact, be on. Regan might have realized that he's been caught and is trying to pick up the pace a little bit to make sure that Wilson stays at arm's length in the final few laps. We're down to 4 to go now. Oh, big lockup, though, from Regan down into turn 12. A huge puff of smoke.
Yeah, I was just watching him from the kind of the eye in the sky cam, and it looked like he was entering really, really quickly, and I thought he was going to miss the corner entirely. He did actually get it pulled up, but obviously with a big lockup in doing so.
What do lockups do to these tires now in these Gen 6 cars? Do they heat them up significantly, or can you bring them back?
It'll heat the surface quite a lot, quite quickly, so you want to kind of let that cool back down the next couple of corners and whatnot. And as he goes for a big slide, he might actually be going around right here. He saves it. Wilson Jr. is going to his inside though in the final corner. He's going to get this position for sure.
I was watching the screen as we were on board looking back, and I saw those arms crossing up. And
when he doesn't get it, though, he just had no drive at all.
Wilson getting too eager and gooses it hard enough that he is going to not get the position off of Richard Regan Jr. Still, he's getting mistakes out of the 46, multiple mistakes in the same lap. I don't think this is over.
Yeah, I don't think this is over either, but I was really surprised that he didn't get that pass done right there. He was fully on the inside. He should have been able to get the drive off of the final corner and at the minimum been alongside Regan Jr. down into turn 1. He's hit one of those yellow monster curbs. That's going to really mess him up, but he's not actually lost that too much, but he's doing the seesaw now.
He's still at pace. I thought for sure. Again, we were riding on board, and that thing was flying. So he's got the fire lit under him. Regan is doing everything he can, maybe a little too much in a lot of cases, and yet it's still quicker. It's 1.7 seconds back to Wilson Jr.
Yeah, but he drove in pretty deep right there. You saw a lot of wheel in to get it around 11.
Okay, 3 laps to go now. Acosta crosses the line. He's catching yet more lap traffic. Pat Harvey now in front of him. White stopping some of that loss that he was having up to Acosta. It's only 4.5 seconds when a bit ago he lost about 2 seconds in 3 or 4 laps. So something has changed in that process. Harvey letting both of them by nice and easy.
And Harvey is having a miserable day, I think it's fair to say. It feels like every time I've cut to him, he's having a moment, and obviously going 1 lap down is not what he would have wanted.
Yeah, it's been a number of spins and off tracks. He started from 10th. He's down to 13th. I think he's just trying to get this thing to the end so he can go and have a drink afterwards. And 2 of our friends are finding one another once again, Walden and Zemke.
It's the battle that never ends.
Down the backstretch. Adam not close enough. Waldo's going to be safe down into turn 12, at least for now. But if he has a slip up like we've seen many drivers doing, that might not be good news. Also, they're being caught by Acosta. I don't think they're going to be lapped, because we've got too few laps left for that to for him to catch up to them. But he's within maybe about 10 seconds. There he is right there coming into the stadium section. We just saw them weaving through.
Yeah, it looks like Sumner might get caught though, and yeah, you see there he's going to the outside. He's gone 1 down now.
1 less lap that he has to run today. It'll be over sooner. In fact, we're going to get the 2 to go pretty quickly here. You see the 5 taken around the triple apexer. Looking through, Wilson and Regan have fallen apart from one another, so that battle isn't interesting anymore, at least right now. 2 to go for the number 5. And the only battle that we've got within range of one another is the one we just glanced at between Walden and Zemke for 10th.
Yeah, and I don't think that they're going to be caught by Acosta. I don't think he's catching him that quickly. Well, yeah, it's about 3 seconds, so he'll probably not interfere with this fight.
No, I shouldn't see that happen, I think, by now, as we come up the hill once again. Zemke going to try and get this one a little bit better than what we saw him do before. And he was chasing Walden, so I wonder if Waldo himself had some sort of spin recently that brought him back to Adam Zemke. Both of them able to successfully navigate down towards the braking of turn 11. Looking to the inside as he's able to find that apex way better than the 84. And this might be the best chance he's seen yet.
Yeah, it looks like he's got a good run. He might not get any overlap on the entry of the corner, but it'll only take a mistake from Walden to allow the pass to happen here for Zemke.
Things looking good for Waldo. Look at that, right down to that yellow curb. And the 84 will retain that 10th position. They're going to hear the white flag, see the white flag maybe even, but it won't be for them. It'll be the car pretty much directly behind them. Down through the stadium section and into the triple right-hander now. They'll get 2 more laps to try and decide who is the quicker driver here today.
Yeah, and it's kind of ebbed and flowed between them. Obviously, we saw Zemke earlier on down at 11 had to duck to the outside to avoid running over the back of Walden. So that set him back a little bit, and I think he's kind of been behind since then. Obviously, Bissell Jr. was in that fight at the time. He's way up the road. He's actually pulled 10 seconds on this pair.
White flag waves for Abner Acosta as he crosses the line. Those two heading up into turn 1 do not change positions. I know we cut away as the 57 stays behind. So we'll check back in on the 5 later on. We once again pull on screen Walden leading Zemke. And very good there from Adam, gaining a lot of time. His line looking much quicker. Let's see if he can keep that up through the last few set of S's. Here we go.
He's a little bit wide of that first one to the right. It's going to make the cutback a little bit sharper for him. Looks like someone up ahead has actually had a spin.
Might have been Jose Medina. He's 2 laps down from the leader already.
I think it was Bissell Jr. actually.
Oh, really?
He's now lost all that gap that he had.
Interesting. Yeah, it was with Cowgill, and he's now about 18 seconds back. We might go check out that replay in a bit. In the meantime, I don't think it's on this time for Zemke. He was much closer last time, and even still could not make the overtake. You can start to see in the background Abner Acosta in our shots. What a transition it's been. From sports cars, GTE cars, to hopping into the LMP2s briefly before coming over to the oval side. Abner Acosta tried to show that he is a Mario Andretti of iRacing and can wheel anything that you put him in. And he's proven it right now because he is getting ready to take his 3rd ever PRL victory, his 2nd in the Cup Series, and it's back-to-back on top of that as he comes down into turn 20. No one to challenge him. Abner Acosta wins here at Circuit of the Americas.
Obviously a setback at the start, but overcame it pretty well, gained the lead, and kind of never looked back from there.
Oh, our only battle is still quite tight. They're going to be our last ones across the line, too. Walden and Zemke. Adams still challenging and keeping that 84 honest. Up ahead of them.
It's not too far away.
Yeah. I just noticed the same thing. That is for position. Is this fuel, or did he gets some damage from his incident.
I don't think he hit anything, but his tires definitely won't be happy with him. I think he's out of reach, but it'll only take a mistake to bring him in.
Well, that'll be a carrot on a stick for both Walden and Zemke. Seeing that next spot up and a top 10 potentially. Or actually, excuse me, the battle is for top 10 for Walden and 9th. Actually, if they're able to catch and pass Besaw Jr. here in this last lap. Down the back stretch, a little bit of a drift to the inside. Walden maybe trying to cover his bases to be sure that Adam is not able to overtake. Adam's going to send it in deep. He's gaining. Thankfully, it's under control. He's not going to get the spot, though.
He might have a chance through the stadium section, though. He's been quite strong through here. If he can overlap, he might be able to get the drive off.
This is for the view from Robert in front of them. They have cut this down by a couple tenths on this lap alone. But there goes the stadium section. Nothing quite yet. Maybe he could sneak something into turn 20. He's very close. Oh, but he lost it.
Yeah, he just picked up the power slightly too soon and has fallen back, but still an opportunity. We've seen some mistakes in the final corner. It could still happen.
He's close. He's close. He's going to chuck it in. A Hail Mary down through the last corner. Has he got it? He's side by side to the line. It's going to be close. Adam gets it right in the last corner over Walden. And that is going to take us to a break here on the Global Sim Racing channel. Laughter on the radio from Walden. They enjoyed that one. We'll come back with the unofficial results as well as driver interviews. So stick around. Welcome back to Circuit of the Americas. The penultimate round in the PRL NASCAR Cup Series went to Abner Acosta. Back-to-back victories as he charges up the points late in the season. Elliott White followed him home. He kept it honest, but it was still 5.5 seconds at the end for second place. Matthew Long with a very distant third, 30 seconds back. Trent Dinkle finished fourth with a botched qualifying, worked his way through, and on top of things, he had to come back from a spin in lap one. Josh Daniels was fifth. Richard Regan Jr., for some reason, just didn't have pace today. He finished where he started in sixth. David Wilson was seventh, and Patrick Cowgill was eighth. Robert Besaw Jr. finished ninth today, with Zepke just sneaking by to get a top 10 on the last corner.
Waldo Walden lost the 10th spot on the very final corner, comes home in 11th, and the last car on the lead lap. Pat Harvey had an interesting time out there today. He comes home with first car a lap down in 12th. Brandon Walter, he's also a 1 lap down in 13th with Taylor Stout, 1 lap down in 14th. Charles Sumner actually fell to 2 laps down in 15th with Jose Medina in 16th. Then we had Doug Evans, had a very interesting retirement from the race due to his radio being stuck open. He finishes in 17th, and Michael Witt in 18th. And then Danny Cervantes, Chad Brown, and Joao Guerra did not start the race.
Looks like we've got Acosta ready to talk to us. Abner, it was like for season after season, you couldn't buy a win here in the Oval Series on PRL, and now they're falling from the sky. That's 3 in a row in the last week.
Yeah, good evening. Yeah, very good. 3 wins.
Welcome to Circuit of the Americas. The cliche of everything's bigger in Texas rings true for this track in the Lone Star State.
Road courses, but I don't think I was that successful in road courses before. I was fast, but I wasn't really winning. I'm definitely a lot more comfortable now with the car. And last week with the Oval, that definitely was a surprise. So yeah, I'm definitely very happy.
I was going to say, don't sell yourself short, because that win on the Oval is definitely worth cheering for. However, we noticed that your teammate Richard Regan Jr. was a little bit off pace. What happened that caused you two to kind of swap places, where you were suddenly thriving and he was struggling?
He had a very busy week, so he didn't have a lot of time to prep for the race. So I think even before the session, I don't think he had a lot of practice. So I tried to kind of catch him up a little bit, and he did gain some speed, but he got a 6th place. Honestly, for the laps that he had, that's very good. But I'm sure if he had more, Richard's very good in road courses. He would have been up there in the top as well.
I floated the idea that maybe he didn't have time to practice this week. That kind of explains a lot. What about the problem at the start there? Near spin and a poor run off of the rolling start. Were you kind of kicking yourself, or did you feel under control after that happened?
I did the same thing on the truck series. Same thing, made a mistake on turn 1. In here, I spun my tires. Did not expect it, and then kind of try to send it on turn 1, and then I hit the curb. My car went up in the air, and then I tried to get on the gas again, and I almost spun out. I was kicking myself in the face. I was upset, but it's 33 laps, so I knew I was able to get up to Elliott, and I know that's when I would have trouble because it's so hard to pass here, and he's super fast. So I knew I would get to Elliott. It was just a matter of passing him.
Well, fantastic job. It gave us some thrills seeing you climb back through. Anybody you want to thank for this victory?
Yeah, I want to thank my teammates, Private Label Team Hype, and everybody that works on the car every week. Ethica and Neonism, and just you guys for broadcasting at GSRC, and PRL for hosting the league. Thank you.
As Abner Acosta winner here today, and Christian has caught up with second place, Elliott White.
Elliott, a good run to second there after actually sort of starting in the lead. Now, you got that good run at the beginning of the race, obviously held the lead almost until and we appear to have lost Elliott White, actually.
Well, we might try and get him back in a bit. In the meantime, I've got Matthew Long with us as well. Matt, it was a 3rd place finish, but it looked like after the first few laps, you seem to have lost sight with the front 2. What do you think made the difference today?
I think they're just better than me, man. I was excited to be able to run up front with them for a little bit, but those guys were bad fast. I couldn't keep up with them. I'm definitely happy with a third place finish though. We had a couple tough weeks at Darlington and Dover, just with missing the setup a little bit and getting behind. I made some mistakes in pit road last week at Dover, so we needed this. Definitely a big points day for us. So it was a good race. We'll take it.
And you had some company there coming through early on with Abner having his little issue and falling behind. We kind of felt like maybe some of the drivers were not fighting him too hard. Did you just kind of let him through once he had the run, or did you try and fight it your hardest?
Oh, I was trying to fight him for sure. He just had more. Those guys could get off the corners better than me for sure. And I tried what I could to keep him behind me, but he was just faster.
In terms of the championship, you're going to close in on Richard by a few points, not a huge margin naturally. Coming into the last round, knowing that it can't be dropped, do you still have hope that maybe you can sneak past him if something happens to him?
Yeah, for sure. Anything could happen in racing. So, no, it was good to chip back away a little bit this week and put us in position for, if something does happen next week, we could be right there. So, we'll see. We'll be there.
Well, we hope to see you next week. Is there anybody you'd like to thank for this podium today?
Yeah, definitely. I want to thank Pebble Isle Marina for being on the car up in Kentucky Lake, Tennessee, King Creek Marina, James Bird for helping put it all together, my teammate Taylor Stout for helping working on setups each week, and definitely want to thank you guys at GSRC. You guys put on a great show every week, and PRL for hosting the league. We're excited to announce we'll be back for year 2, starting up in June.
We're excited about it as well. And that was Matt Long, third place. We're going to give another try. Christian's going to see if he can get the microphone working with Elliot White.
It appears that we cannot, but if he comes back, then we'll try again.
We've had a few problems with that, unfortunately, but we would like to talk to him when he gets back one of these days. In the meantime, we've got to thank our sponsors for today's race, starting, of course, with SimMSA. Find out how you can bridge the gap between virtual and real motorsports at SimMSA.net. And NinjaTrader. Get started with a risk-free trading simulator and start tracking your performance at NinjaTrader.com. And finally, The Butt Kicker. Feel what you've been missing at TheButtKicker.com. Thanks to the companies that provide the software and the hardware for our broadcast listed here on your screen. And additional thanks go to June Lalonde, who provides our wonderful music. Her Bandcamp is there listed if you want to check that out. Thanks to the team today, Christian, Sean, and Dougie. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com, or you can check out our social media through the outlets listed at the bottom of the screen. If you'd like to support the channel, check out our merchandise store, which is simply simracingmerch.com/GSRC. We got a link in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss a moment, because as we mentioned, in a week's time, if you're not too tired from all the racing between Indy and the Coke 600, we've got our own Charlotte race Sunday, May 30th at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. We also have upcoming races for other series listed on the screen, so check those out and mark them down on your calendar. Until next time, race clean, race hard. We'll see you on the track.